All right. So, Ghost of Yotei, the follow up to Ghost of Tsushima that's actually coming out pretty soon, is sparking a conversation around Assassin's Creed Shadows. I think it's very interesting because I did not say a single word about Assassin's Creed Shadows. When I started seeing a lot of the controversy, I just kind of sat back and watched. I looked at all of the different arguments, and boy, are there a lot of gaping holes in a lot of these arguments. Those who are for and those who are against. Another reason I didn't say anything is because I actually have people that I respect, people that I like, who are on both camps. So in a situation like that, I just thought it'd probably be best to keep my mouth shut. However, a comment has shown up on my channel, and you guys know when the comments come in, I usually try my best to answer them. So SensorTube84, shout out to you. I think your comment does have some merit to it, and let's go ahead and talk about it. So this person said, hold on. All the hate of AC Shadow that AC Shadows is receiving for being in quote woke, but everyone loves Ghost of Yotei. So it's fair to say then Assassin's Creed Shadows is only getting that hate because one of the main characters is a black man. Now, I'm going to try my best to answer this with as much calm as I possibly can. The very first thing I'm going to go ahead and put out here, because some of you think I'm freaking Gus Fring, Giancarlo Esposito, but no, I'm actually a guy from West Africa. That's me on the side preparing some gameplay video that I did for Ghost of Tsushima, I think about 4 years ago. So again, let's go ahead and make sure that we point that out because I want to answer this question from as interesting a perspective as I possibly can, because Japanese culture or Asian culture shares a lot of tropes and a lot of similarities to what you would say you can find in some other Eastern cultures. So the very first thing we have to point out with this particular argument and the fallacy is Ghost of Yotei represents a female samurai. You're comparing a female Japanese samurai to using a black male character in a different video game. There already is a discrepancy there. That's number one. Number two, I tried to give you what I thought was a reasonable response, and I said, if Assassin's Creed Origins didn't exist, then your theory might have been strong. And this is where I was trying to see what you might say. You see, if you look at the Assassin's Creed games, I've seen a lot of people argue from the perspective of historically accurate or whatnot. Get that argument out of here. That argument makes no sense because this is a video game. Okay? Bear with me. But when you look at all the other Assassin's Creed games, you will find something quite peculiar in all of them. The protagonists are representative of the culture that they actually have lived in. Not saying that protagonists or other characters from other cultures do not show up in those games. I'm just saying that the main characters, the driving force, have always been grounded in the context and in the culture and in the place and in the location where they're actually being represented, where the game is being represented. And Origins comes into perspective because that game is actually done in Egypt, and it does represent black Africans or Africans at the time, according to whatever historical nuance they wanted to go with. You starting to see what I'm saying? If you look at Valhalla, it does represent people who were of that region of Europe, being the driving forces and the characters in the game, both, characters. If you look at Odyssey, which is my favorite, it does represent two Greek main characters that are part of the driving force in the culture and so on and so forth. So the historical accuracy is not necessarily the case. It's just that Assassin's Creed had always represented and made its driving force people within the context, be it a male or female, however it is the developers or whoever the creators wanted to go with, the driving force within those particular contexts. But when it came to Japan, that standard and measure was not followed. Now, could it be that the resistance the game is getting from Japan has something to do with that? That's a hypothesis. I don't know. I'm not from Japan. I can't think like a Japanese, individual that's looking at the game. However, from my own perspective, looking and saying, well, imagine if Assassin's Creed Origins, which was actually done in Africa, right? Which was setting, it was in Africa. Imagine if when they made Origins, instead of having a Bayek, I had a Zhongshe, a Chinese man, as the protagonist. Maybe Zhongshe was in Egypt at the time. And so we decided that Zhongshe would be the person that would be the driving force of Assassin's Creed Origins. And that name I used from one of my, good friends from college who came from China. And when he told us his name, we were like, what? So I learned his name. I might not be saying it perfectly correctly in the correct dialect. So pardon me if you're Chinese listening to this. So at the end of the day, again, I think it's a lazy argument for people to try to make it seem like it's because of a black character that the game is getting a lot of the heat that it's getting. Also, another hypothesis is, could there be people who don't want to see a black character in an Assassin's Creed game? Of course. I mean, I can't say definitely not. I'm just pointing out that there are many different hypotheses that you can point to, but the most likely one that I think many people don't want to say is the one that I just said, and maybe somebody else has said it before. And so this is why I think Assassin's Creed is getting the heat, while Ghost of Yotei is something that people are looking forward to. The driving force for Ghost of Tsushima was representative of the people who you would have found in Tsushima, who were the majority in terms of people of Tsushima. And I think what's being learned here is a hard lesson when you're actually delving into, and we're living in a very polarized world too. So when you're delving into a lot of these cultural tropes and cultural nuances, you gotta understand, exactly the messages that you might be conveying in this regard. And you know what's crazy is Assassin's Creed has also introduced characters as playable characters afterwards, even if a game was done in a setting where the driving force was, say a character representative of that time or whatever it is. And they've done it all kinds of different ways. I'm not saying that, they've only, maybe I did say in the beginning that they did follow one pattern, but there are many Assassin's Creed games and I've not played many of them. I'm from the Origins and Odyssey, whatever. I played a little bit of some of the first games. Maybe they've used characters that are from different, backgrounds and stuff. Maybe. But I think one of the things that you're hearing right now that's resonating is just the fact that they have pretty much not followed that pattern, which made a lot of sense more than anything else. And if they really wanted to bring Yasuke into the mix, I think they could have easily done that if they had followed that system and gone with how they did. There was the other character in Black Flag that they brought in later on as DLC and so on and so forth. I strongly believe that would have probably been a way for them to be able to go ahead and say, all right, let's get Yasuke into this story. Bring him in as a supporting character, as a DLC character. I think it would have been fine. And then finally, just to close out this video, gaming right now is super polarized. There is a huge struggle between a lot of people who are gamers and a lot of people who are creatives. And so right now, a lot of gamers are taking out a lot of stuff on any game that they just feel is there to not provide a gaming experience. I mean, if it even sensed, they would take, and gamers. Y'all have been here, right? Aha. So if you know anything about gamers, then you already know that gamers are going to pretty much respond to stuff that they just look at that looks a little off, that doesn't follow an established pattern. They're going to look at it really weird. So I think someone has sowed some seeds, and the last few games that we've gotten where we've seen, creatives from those games treat gamers or actually address gamers in a way that's been, simply weird. So it could be malice. I'm not going to sit here and say it couldn't be. It could be one of many things, but for somebody to say, and isolated that it's just because of racism or whatever it is, can we please stop? Oh, goodness gracious. I didn't want to make this video, man. I honestly didn't, and I may not even publish it. If you hear it, then, fortunately for you, I did publish it. But I'd love to leave. I'd love to stay out of this one because Assassin's Creed is not my cup of tea. However, I thought it was interesting to go ahead and, maybe finally chime in because the game is getting dragged. And Ghost of Yotei, it doesn't look like that's going to happen to it if everything goes well. Of which even Ghost of Yotei, if something feels off, some gamers or many gamers might say, nope, keep that game. It's an interesting world today. Thanks for watching. Peace out.